All right, let's settle this once and for all. I've lost count of how many times I've stood in the grocery store aisle, staring at butter on one side and margarine on the other, genuinely confused about which one I should be putting in my cart. And I know I'm not alone here. For decades, we've been getting mixed messages. First, butter was the villain, then margarine was toxic, and now everyone's confused. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I dove deep into the actual research, talked to nutritionists, and now I'm going to break this down for you in a way that actually makes sense. Let's start with butter because, honestly, it's the OG. Humans have been making butter for thousands of years. It's simple. Cream, maybe some salt, and that's it. 1 tablespoon of butter gives you about 102 calories, 12 grams of fat, and here's the part that scared everyone for years: 7 grams of saturated fat. For context, that's roughly a third of your recommended daily limit, if you're following standard dietary guidelines. Now, here's where things got interesting in the research world. For the longest time, saturated fat was public enemy number one. The logic was simple. Saturated fat raises LDL cholesterol. LDL cholesterol clogs arteries. Therefore, saturated fat causes heart disease. But recent studies have challenged this oversimplified narrative. A major meta-analysis, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2020, reviewed data from over 600,000 participants across 15 countries. The researchers found no significant association between total saturated fat intake and heart disease risk. I know, right? Decades of avoiding butter, and now the science is saying it's more complicated than we thought. But wait, before you start spreading butter on everything, let's dig deeper. The same research shows that what you replace saturated fat with matters enormously. When people replace saturated fat with refined carbohydrates and sugar, their health outcomes don't improve and sometimes get worse. However, when they replace it with polyunsaturated fats, like those found in fish and certain plant oils, cardiovascular risk does decrease. A study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that replacing just 5% of calories from saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat reduced heart disease risk by 25%. Now let's talk about what butter actually contains beyond just fat. It has vitamins A, D, E, and K2. That K2 is particularly interesting because research from the Rotterdam study, which followed over 4,800 people for 7 years, found that higher vitamin K2 intake was associated with reduced arterial calcification and a 57% lower risk of death from heart disease. Butter from grass-fed cows contains even more K2, plus higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids and conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA. Studies suggest CLA might have anti-cancer properties, though the research is still ongoing. Okay, now let's flip to margarine. This is where things get really interesting, and honestly, a bit messy. Margarine was invented in France in 1869 as a cheaper alternative to butter. Originally, it was made from beef tallow, but modern margarine is typically made from vegetable oils that have been processed and solidified. The question is, how are they processing these oils? And what does that do to the final product? Here's the big issue that dominated margarine's reputation for years: trans fats. To make liquid vegetable oil solid at room temperature, manufacturers used a process called partial hydrogenation. This created trans fats, which are basically the worst kind of fat you can consume. The New England Journal of Medicine published research showing that trans fats not only raise your bad LDL cholesterol, but also lower your good HDL cholesterol. We're talking about a double whammy for your heart health. Studies estimated that trans fats were responsible for up to 50,000 premature deaths annually in the United States alone. The good news? Most countries have now banned or severely restricted trans fats in food products. The FDA required their removal from the U.S. food supply by 2018, and many other countries followed suit. So modern margarine typically doesn't contain the trans fats. That made it so problematic. But that doesn't automatically make it healthy. Today's margarine uses different processes to stay solid. Some brands use palm oil or palm kernel oil, which are actually high in saturated fat, sometimes even higher than butter. Other brands use a process called interesterification, which rearranges the fatty acid molecules. The jury's still out on whether this process creates health concerns. A study in Nutrition and Metabolism found that interesterified fats might negatively affect blood, glucose, and insulin levels, but more research is needed. If you're finding this helpful so far, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. It tells me you want more content like this. And it helps other people find this information too. Now, here's where we need to talk about the type of margarine, because not all margarines are created equal. Some margarines are made primarily from olive oil or canola oil, both of which contain mostly unsaturated fats. These are completely different products from margarine made with tropical oils. A spread made from olive oil is going to give you monounsaturated fats, which research consistently shows are beneficial for heart health. The pre-dimed study, one of the largest dietary trials ever conducted, with over 7,400 participants, found that diets high in olive oil reduced cardiovascular events by approximately 30%. But here's something most people don't consider: additives. Margarine often contains emulsifiers, preservatives, and artificial colors to make it look and behave like butter. Some research suggests that certain emulsifiers might negatively affect gut bacteria. A study from Georgia State University found that common food emulsifiers altered the gut microbiome in mice and promoted inflammation. Now, mice aren't humans, so we can't draw direct conclusions, but it's something worth considering. Let's talk about what the actual health organizations say. The American Heart Association still recommends limiting saturated fat, suggesting that soft margarines with no trans fats and low saturated fat are better choices than butter for heart health. However, they also emphasize that the overall dietary pattern matters more than any single food. The Mediterranean diet, which includes moderate amounts of butter and cheese, but emphasizes olive oil, has consistently shown better health outcomes than low-fat diets. Here's my take after reviewing all this research. The answer isn't black and white, and it depends on your individual health situation. If you have high cholesterol or cardiovascular disease, limiting saturated fat from any source, including butter, is probably wise. Your doctor might recommend a plant-based spread made from healthy oils. But for most healthy people eating a balanced diet, moderate butter consumption, we're talking a tablespoon or two per day, isn't going to destroy your health. The Harvard School of Public Health looked at this question and concluded that small amounts of butter are fine, but using olive oil as your primary fat source is ideal. They also noted that what you put butter on matters. Butter on white bread with jam? Not great. Butter on whole grain bread with avocado? Much better choice. What about taste and cooking? Let's be real here. Butter tastes better. There's a reason chefs prefer it. It has a lower smoke point than some oils, so it's not ideal for high-heat cooking. But for baking and moderate heat cooking, it's fantastic. Some margarines can work as substitutes in baking, but they often don't provide the same flavor or texture. And many people find that margarine leaves an artificial aftertaste. So bottom line, if I'm choosing between butter and a highly processed margarine, made with palm oil and lots of additives, I'm choosing butter every time, small amounts, used thoughtfully. If I'm choosing between butter and a high-quality spread made from olive oil or avocado oil with minimal processing, that's a tougher call, and either can fit into a healthy diet. The key is moderation, reading labels carefully, and focusing on your overall eating pattern, rather than obsessing over any single ingredient. The real enemy isn't butter or margarine, it's the ultra-processed foods, excessive sugar, and lack of whole foods that characterize many modern diets. Whether you use a bit of butter or a quality, margarine matters far less than whether you're eating plenty of vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and fruits. If you want more evidence-based breakdowns of confusing nutrition topics like this, please subscribe to the channel. I'm here to cut through the noise and give you information you can actually use. Thanks for watching, and here's to making informed choices about your health.